14th of June 2019. Just after 7 a.m., Bowdon, Greater Manchester. A knock on the door turns to a battering ram. Inside, marble floors, designer art, and a man still half asleep. On the surface, a millionaire's life, Ferraris, mansions, Warhols. But in the next room, encrypted phones, forged passports, stacks of cash. The man at the center? Aram Sheibani. To neighbors, a property developer. To investigators, a ghost in Britain's drug underworld. 2 years later, in a Manchester courtroom, his empire finally collapses. From Bowdon to Bogota, from crypto wallets to cocaine. This is the story of how one man built a fortune on lies. And why the police were determined to take it all back. Welcome to Vault Crime. Let's get straight into it. To outsiders, this was the picture of success. A 30-something man in designer suits. A fleet of sports cars rotated on the driveway. Original Banksy prints hung in polished frames. Holidays in Marbella, Madrid, and beyond. His name, Aram Sheibani. To neighbors, he was a property developer. Smooth accent. Polite smile. Always on the move. No one questioned where the millions came from. But beneath the polished marble, cracks were forming. Police financial investigators whispered his name in back offices. Unexplained wealth orders circled. His properties didn't add up. The math didn't lie. Because when Sheibani spent, he spent like a king. £5 million in properties across the UK and Spain. £1.5 million tucked away in crypto. Stacks of forged documents to keep the show alive. He lived like a mogul, but paid no taxes like one. And every night, behind those mansion doors, the line between businessman and kingpin blurred. But the thing about masks is they slip. We would soon discover the mask isn't held by Sheibani alone. It's held by someone closer, someone who should have protected him. And when her fingerprints show up in the paperwork, the empire starts to crumble. You're watching a man build castles out of lies. If you're still here and not commenting on how greed blinds people, you're letting the story vanish into silence. Don't scroll, drop your thoughts. And let's keep going. Family. The one bond meant to shield you from the world. The place you run when enemies circle. For Aram Sheibani, family wasn't just comfort, it was cover. At the heart of his empire stood someone who should have been his anchor. Not an underworld rival. Not a hired enforcer. But his own mother, Fatima Sheibani. On paper she was ordinary. A mother in her 60s. Quiet. Respectable. The last person anyone would picture with criminal ink on her hands. But the documents told a different story. Mortgages transferred. Property deeds falsified. Money passed through accounts that never should have seen it. Each transaction carried her fingerprints. And prosecutors would later prove that she wasn't tricked. She wasn't confused. She knew. She knew the cash fueling those houses wasn't clean. She knew the son she loved had turned wealth into a weapon. And still she signed the papers. Still she played her part. Imagine it, a mother laundering her son's blood-stained money. Not once. Not twice. But enough to help build a property empire worth millions. When police dug into the records, the trail was unmistakable. Every forged signature led them closer to Bowdon. Every fraudulent form pulled her deeper into the web. What should have been a sanctuary, a family bond, became the weakest link in the chain. Because unlike couriers or foot soldiers, family ties leave a permanent trace. And Fatima's trace was everywhere. The court would later call her role despicable. 10 months behind bars, a light sentence compared to her son. But enough to stain her name forever. Think about that. A mother trading her integrity for her son's empire of deceit. If you're watching this and not commenting, ask yourself this. What would you do if your child handed you dirty money? Stay silent or call it out? Drop your answer below. Don't sit quiet. Let's see where you stand. Back to the story. For Aram, his mother's cooperation was priceless. She bought him time. She made him appear legitimate. She kept the illusion alive. But illusions can't last forever. And while Fatima was playing banker, Aram was playing kingpin, moving millions in crypto, ordering devices that even police struggled to crack. By now, investigators weren't just suspicious. They were certain. And the family shield that once protected him was turning into evidence that would destroy him. In the next chapter, we strip back the mask completely. Because Aram wasn't just spending dirty money, he built an entire business model of crime. And like any business, once you follow the structure, you find the cracks. Every empire has a blueprint. Aram Sheibani's was no different. But his company didn't sell products. It sold lies, drugs, and shadows. Step 1. Property fronts. He purchased homes across Manchester, London, and even Spain. Not in his own name. Through others, through forged documents, through smoke and mirrors. Each house was a vault to store cash, cocaine, or both. Step 2. Crypto laundering. He moved £1.5 million into digital wallets. Untraceable. Invisible. At least he thought so. Police would later find scribbled recovery codes on scraps of paper. The keys to his fortune, hidden in plain sight. Step 3. Forged paperwork. P60s, payslips, bank statements. All fake. All convincing. With them, he tricked banks, bought homes, and made his empire look legitimate. Step 4. Tools of secrecy. Encrypted phones. Encrypted USBs. Devices he believed even law enforcement couldn't touch. He would later try to smash them, flush them, destroy them. But fragments survived. Enough to speak louder than he ever could. Step 5. Drug distribution. Cocaine, ketamine, ecstasy. All moved through couriers and runners. He didn't dirty his hands on the streets. He built layers, people below him, silenced by fear or loyalty. It was a business. A cold, calculated business. Profits measured not in balance sheets but in lives ruined. You're hearing this like a Netflix story. But remember, every forged document, every gram sold, someone's family paid the price. If you're watching and not reacting, aren't you just scrolling past their pain? Comment below, was this genius or pure greed? The mask of luxury was gone. Revealed beneath was a man running crime like a CEO. But even the smartest business depends on its workers. And Aram's network relied on shadows. The hidden handlers, the silent couriers, the ghosts who kept him rich. Soon we will meet them. And discover how one slip shattered everything. Behind every kingpin stands an army of ghosts. Unseen. Unnamed. But without them the empire collapses. For Sheibani they were everywhere. Couriers carrying kilos across borders. Property fronts signing deeds they didn't own. Runners shifting cash through back alleys and safe houses. They never appeared in newspapers. They rarely showed in court. But their fingerprints were all over his empire. Some were lured by money. Others by fear. A few maybe by loyalty. Imagine being the driver told to collect a suitcase. No questions asked. One mistake, a police stop, a camera glance, and you vanish into prison. But while you rot, the kingpin keeps spending. For years, his handlers kept the illusion alive. But shadows are fragile. And one night, a courier slipped. We don't know his name. We may never know his full story. But the evidence trail he left cracked the case wide open. A drop went wrong. A pattern revealed itself. And suddenly, detectives had proof that Aram wasn't just a property dealer. He was the hub of something much darker. You see how one mistake exposed the empire? Now ask yourself, if you were in their shoes, would you take the money or walk away? Drop it in the comments. Don't just watch, take a side. The handlers made him rich. But they also made him vulnerable. And when the masks cracked, the police smelled blood. They watched. They waited. And soon the cat-and-mouse chase began. Surveillance begins in silence. Days of waiting. Weeks of nothing. But detectives knew. Aram's empire was too loud to stay hidden forever. Greater Manchester police launched a quiet storm. Financial investigators traced suspicious transfers. Undercover officers followed luxury cars. Each new property raised more questions. How did a man with no clear income live like a billionaire? They raided once. They raided twice. Each time they found more. Forged papers. Encrypted tech. Enough to make suspicion into certainty. Aram grew paranoid. He installed tighter locks. He swapped phones often. He bragged to girlfriends of being untouchable. But paranoia breeds mistakes. The more he tried to cover, the more evidence he left. Detectives moved patiently. Every slip, every forged mortgage, every dodgy crypto transfer. Collected, cataloged, stored for the courtroom. It wasn't about catching him once. It was about catching him completely. For 2 years, the chase stretched from Manchester to Spain. Raids on properties revealed hidden vaults. Forensics unpicked devices he tried to destroy. And each thread led back to one man. You've watched the chase unfold. Now ask yourself, if police hadn't cared, how big could this empire have grown? If you're watching in silence, you're choosing his side. Speak up. Drop your thoughts below. The hunters had their case. The mouse was cornered. And soon they would make their move. In the next chapter, the evidence speaks louder than any confession. Crypto, phones, art, Each piece a brick in the wall of guilt. And one artifact hidden in plain sight became the smoking gun. Evidence has no loyalty. It doesn't lie. It doesn't forget. When detectives raided Sheibani's homes, they found a museum of crime. Stacks of cash, over £1.2 million stuffed in bags. Designer art, Warhols and Banksys hanging on pristine walls. Forged bank statements, payslips and P60s. Luxury cars parked like trophies. And then, the tech. Encrypted phones. Iron key USBs. Devices Sheibani tried to smash, flush, or hide. He believed they were uncrackable. But fragments survived. And those fragments painted the story he never wanted told. Inside the files, mortgage applications riddled with lies. Crypto recovery codes scrawled on scraps of paper. Transaction trails leading to wallets worth millions. Every scrap, every byte, every pixel screamed fraud, laundering, drugs. The prosecution didn't need his confession. They had his empire speaking for him. Detectives even found traces of cocaine, ketamine, and ecstasy. Not on the streets, but inside the very houses that masked his wealth. The irony? The man who lived to protect his secrets left them lying in plain sight. You're watching luxury unravel into evidence. But imagine, every bag of cash meant another family torn apart. If you stayed quiet till now, you're choosing to look away. Comment below, what's worse, the drugs or the lies that hid them? One by one the exhibits stacked in court. The illusion of a millionaire developer shattered into the image of a criminal kingpin. And once the evidence spoke, there was only one chapter left. The fall. Manchester Crown Court. June 2021. The courtroom was packed. Journalists, detectives, prosecutors, all waiting to hear the verdict on a man who lived like a god. Aram Sheibani stood tall. Designer suit. Calm face. But the mask was gone. 20 charges. Fraud. Money laundering. Conspiracy to supply Class A drugs. The evidence was overwhelming. His lawyers tried to argue paperwork, tried to argue misunderstanding. But every forged document, every crypto wallet, every stash of cocaine shut down the defense. Judge Anthony Cross QC didn't mince words. He called Sheibani the head of a large-scale drugs conspiracy. He spoke of greed, arrogance, and the damage inflicted on communities. The sentence, 37 years in prison. The gallery fell silent. The empire was gone. The art, the cars, the homes, the cash, all seized. But even then Sheibani didn't surrender. He refused to hand over passwords. Refused to admit defeat. And for that, extra years stacked on his time. His mother, Fatima, also stood in the dock. 10 months for her part in laundering his fortune. A mother and son bound by crime. Both left with nothing. Some say he was smart. Others say he was selfish. But here's the question. Would you trade freedom for wealth if you knew it ended here? Drop your answer below. Silence only protects the guilty. Aram Sheibani walked out of court in chains. The kingpin had fallen. But stories don't end with the sentencing. Because years later, one final twist forced Sheibani to pay again. The legacy of greed comes back to haunt him. April 2024. From behind prison walls, Sheibani thought his empire was finished. But the law wasn't done with him yet. A confiscation order landed. He was told to repay £3.5 million in dirty cash. Or face another decade behind bars. The properties? Gone. The cars? Gone. The art? Seized. The crypto? Recovered. All the trophies he used to flaunt his power turned into reminders of how greed devours itself. For the community scarred by his trade, the damage lingered. Families broken by addiction. Streets marked by violence. Young runners abandoned, left to pick up the pieces. For law enforcement, the case was a warning. Even encrypted phones, crypto wallets, and forged documents can't shield an empire forever. And for the underworld, the message was clear. If Aram Sheibani could fall, anyone could. But still in the shadows, new crews rise. New networks form. The cycle of greed, betrayal, and illusion continues. You've watched an empire built and destroyed. If you leave without commenting, without subscribing, aren't you choosing silence? The same silence that lets crime thrive? Break it. Drop your thoughts. And join us before the next story begins. One man. One empire. One fall. This was the rise and ruin of Aram Sheibani. And somewhere, tonight, another empire is already being built.